So you would say Google Chrome is a program, and then when you run it, Google Chrome is now a process, which is a program in process of running. But so in our case, there's the compiled programs. Those I would still consider a little lower level. So if you would say Google Chrome is a program, and then you run it, I don't even know what it is. Google Chrome, but that's all the lower level program code. That's still in user land. That's required just for Windows to give me a desktop, or again, the desktop, Finder, and the search features. In our case, we're going to use a type of program called interpret. So Conley, I believe, said he had experience in Java. Max, did you take any CS? Max or Steven?
Yeah, I took CS in high school.
So the CS in high school, they actually taught compiled programs. So those are generally more lower level, more gritty. So it's if you remember in Visual Studios how you would press the play, that would actually compile your program code into the ones and zeros and run it. We are dealing with interpreted programs, so that's what we care about. An interpreted program is interesting because it doesn't need to be compiled. So instead of having us worry about creating something called a binary, we can just type out program code, which is a sequence of instructions, what we wanted to do, and we can have a program kind of read through it line by line and say, okay, do this, do that, do that, do that, do that. So that's why some programs are still programs, but they're not in binary as you'd associate them with. The best example is Python. You can create a Python program that does every single thing as operating system, except it wouldn't be executable. They would all just be text files. But we care about that because in general, interpreted languages are just easier to work with, and they're kind of smooth. If you see my terminal, I can pop open an interpreter and I can just play around and start right away. It doesn't require any additional setup. It's just plug and play. And that brings us up to another important point, which is, so what is an interpreted programming language stored as? It's stored as a text file. This may sound basic, but a text file is a type of computer file. A computer file is what's stored on the operating system. Every single thing on your computer is stored as a file. A file is, you can think of it as a piece of paper. And then the filing cabinet is your operating system. File holds data. Just as this piece of paper holds Wallace F. Ackley Company and my lease, file on a computer holds the exact same things, except it's represented as ones and zeros. But in our case, it's abstracted from the operating system and other things to just represent text. Text is simply just characters that you type on your keyboard. So you can think of it as every 1 and 0 can correlate to a different letter. So if you think of A through Z, you can maybe make A B1, B B2, C B3, and you can represent the whole alphabet text. So there's different types of text. That gets a little out of hand, but you can see that some text is different than other text. How if you've noticed that has any of you used Microsoft Notepad? Okay, I'm going to assume that's a no. There is a application on Windows or a text editor called Notepad, and that's where you can literally just type in text. But all of you have used a web browser, and if you've noticed that text you type in your Notepad and another good example is forms, is different than the text that I can see in Google Docs. And that is because that's the difference between plain text and then marked up text. So the text we're going to be dealing with in programming isn't stylized. It is raw. The only thing it cares about is just representing the letter A. If you look at a web browser, which we'll care about later on, you can notice that you can have different fonts. You can have different colors, different sizes. And all of those things are, I'll phrase it, you know, they're an abstraction above the text, but it's still text. You can still copy and paste. I can go on google.com and say text. And, you know, it looks all stylized. You can have blue letters, you can have white letters, any color letter, but you can still copy them as regular text and paste it into it. This process does a little trickery, but the Notepad deals with something called plain text versus hypertext in HTML. We'll learn HTML later, but you can think of plain text as it doesn't care about how it looks. The text in your document, I guess you text versus plain text. Rich text has a lot more enhancements to it. It allows you to make it italicized. It allows you to make color. Plain text, it's so plain that it's literally just words. You know, if you want to change the font for your plain text, you just configure your editor to display those texts differently, and that's it. Oops. See you later, Conley. So, our plain text is used to then create something called. So, have any of you heard of a script?
I think I've heard you say it.
Okay, I'll try to get Steven. Steven, are you able to speak, or are you solely listening?
I'm able to speak. I'm getting it streamed onto YouTube right now. I believe Ian is on the YouTube video.
Cool.
So if anyone's watching on
nice.
YouTube, this is just like kind of a Python introduction by Noah. What's your last name again, Noah?
Noah Pavuk.
Noah Pavuk. And just getting to know the basics of, you know, Python programming and what a computer is, really.
Oh, I like your little thumbnail. So this is also just our, I guess you'd call it like our mock run. It's technically our first run, so it's establishing the things. We're, as weird as it's going to sound, we're probably not even going to code at all during this first episode. We're just establishing the basics and understanding everything. Sorry, you're about to get some feedback on the stream.
And just getting to know the basics of, you know, Python programming.
Back to where I'm at. So, Steven, have you heard of a script?
I have.
So a script is, you maybe have associated it as, it is a program, but a script is, you can think of it as like a play script, and that's what we're going to be writing. We're going to be writing things called scripts. The script is simply just a text file, which has a bunch of instructions for how to do something. Max may have used Visual Studios, and you can open up the program code. You could argue that's a script. It's the same concept, except the script isn't compiled. The script is what's interpreted. So the programs that we're creating in Python, these are created as scripts. So we write up the code, and then we tell Python to read this script and act it out, as if, you know, think of Tom Cruise acting out a movie script. Basically that, except Tom Cruise's are Python executable. Movie script was made by George Lucas. So that kind of provided the basics of, you know, a text editor, our script, and that. So now the question is, let's go a little more juicy. How are we going to do this? What is Python? So we're going to be working in an environment called POSIX. I will, for some homework, I'll have you guys download a virtual machine. So I'll get in, I guess I'll have to talk to you about what a virtual machine is, but there's this thing called POSIX, which is an abstraction on top of Unix. So if you heard me ramble back a while ago, the thing called Unix, which was made in the 1960s, that is commonly known today as server software. So server software is a little different than Windows. Windows also runs a server, but the Windows that we associate is client software. So that is their client operating system. So the Windows that we use, it primarily functions as a client. It interfaces with us, touch my screen, do things on it. Unix, on the other hand, was designed solely to be behind the scenes. So it's people, you don't actually, you interface with Unix, but you interface within it in a different way. Where Windows is designed for a single user. So it's a single person can use your computer at a single time, your Windows machine. It's like when you log in to your Windows, that's it. So that's called single user. Unix, on the other hand, is multi-user. So that means that you can have multiple people using the exact same thing at the exact same time, and it deals with all of that stuff. So it's multi-user, multi-process. Windows is single user, single process, or multi-process. And in that case, it's probably getting a little too detailed. But basically, all you have to know is Windows is your client, and this thing called the server, or if you've ever heard of the word server, or maybe your office has a server room, your server usually runs behind the scenes software, which doesn't have a graphical interface. So it's just solely there just to get the work done. The server that we're going to be using or we're going to be creating are Python servers on this environment. So Unix, a lot more simpler. It's just designed for automating tasks, just running behind the scenes. So that's going to be it. You're not going to notice a significant difference. The biggest thing is if you want to interface with Unix, which technically is now called POSIX, it gets a little complex. Basically, AT&T owned the trademark for the word Unix, and then everybody started making the exact same concept of Unix in different operating systems and calling it Unix. And then AT&T tried suing the state of California, and a lawsuit lasted for like 10 years. And that's kind of, it turned really messy, but basically you call it Unix, but maybe you've heard of POSIX, which you probably haven't heard, but all of you have heard of the word Linux. It's going to be the distribution of Unix we're using. You're wondering, well, how do I run this Linux? And what is it? So in our case, our Windows clients are advanced enough where we can have something called virtual machines. Max already knows what a virtual machine. Have you heard of the concept of a virtual machine, Stephen? Okay, it basically allows you to run a operating system inside your operating system. So a virtual machine allows you to make like a mock server on your laptop. So when we actually start programming, because all of our laptops are different, Steven's on his Mac, Max is on Windows, maybe I'm on FreeBSD. We want to have the exact same environment, because if I tell you to type CD, maybe CD on FreeBSD might do something slightly different than CD on XYZ. A good example is I can't think of it. But a good example is compatibility. So if any of you have had the issue of maybe you had a file on your Mac and then you tried to transfer it over to Windows and it didn't open properly, that's the best example as to why we want a uniform environment. So we don't have compatibility issues, we don't have things breaking because of just the operating systems being set up differently. So we will be developing inside something called a virtual machine, which creates us a miniature server on our laptops. So you can connect to the virtual machine. Fortunately, Linux still has a desktop, and this virtual machine you use will have a desktop, and you open it just as a window in your Windows, or you can do full screen. But your primary way of actually doing commands inside the virtual machine is using something called the terminal. And this is where it gets important. You can also call the terminal the console, the command prompt, but it's basically what computers were before the concept of a graphical interface. We've had servers a lot longer than we've had clients. So we've had servers since the 60s, 70s. But how did people actually tell these servers to do things, well, they had to use consoles. They literally just typed plain text. So they just sent plain text commands to these servers. And then there's another interpreter similar to Python called bash, which is used just to send commands down to the operating system. So instead of you clicking on your Finder, people back in the day had to type it in Finder. We will be using this for Python. So Python, you technically can do a graphical interface. In our case, to learn it a good way, is we're going to be operating it from the terminal. So that means you're going to be learning how to do some typing. It's going to be very confusing. Most people associate computers as being used with GUIs, but turns out there's two different forms of GUIs. There's terminals and then there's desktops. Terminals, it's just a whole different way of using a computer. You can do the exact same thing you can do in a desktop inside a terminal, but it's just a lot differently. So it's going to be like learning how to swim again. You know, you think you already knew, but guess what? It's gonna take a little bit of adjustment, probably a little bit of frustration. But once you get the hang of it, you know, you're gonna find yourself a lot. Another thing, before the days of the graphical interfaces, the idea of a mouse didn't exist. So all you had was a keyboard. All you could do was type. Fortunately, you're going to start to pick up a lot of shortcuts and ways that you can type and manipulate text a lot faster. And that brings us to our second tool. So our first tool is the terminal, which allows us to invoke commands. Terminal would allow us to open up Python, or say Python, run the script. And then the second tool is called the text editor. A text editor is simply that. It edits text. You can think of Microsoft Word here as a text editor. It is a fancy text editor and it edits rich text, which is, you know, not applicable for our case, but this text editor here allows you to input text. This program I have right here is called Emacs. It is also a text editor. It allows me to create text files. So Word, when you create a new Word document, you are creating a file. So I want to save this. And this is the exact same thing as creating a Python script, except Word uses rich text and this is using just more bare bones. So I can actually show you a good example, but say I want to save this and say hello. I can open up create Word document files. So Word, plain text, you create a new Word document, believe it or not, you are creating a file. So I want to save this. You're going to and this is the exact same thing as creating a Python script, except Word uses rich text and this is using just more bare bones. So I can actually show you a good example, but say I want to save this and say hello. Well, that example didn't work out, but basically, if you open it up the Word document, I can open up this Word document files. So you create a new Word document, believe it or not, you are creating a file. So I want to save this. Formatting behind the scenes for to identify this as hello. Another good example is Notepad. So I can actually show you a good example, but Windows, say I want to save this and say this. Notepad simply is similar to Microsoft Word, except it's just a lot basic. It's a lot more basic. Notepad is just an editor. It's a plain text editor. So in theory, if you know, we could use Notepad because I want to save this. Are we actually going to? No, because that would be very annoying. It would just be agitating. Fortunately, as Word is advanced, plain text editors have gotten pretty advanced too. Our virtual machine will have a few different types of plain text editors, but plain text editors can be categorized at the similar to the two different types of graphical interfaces. So as we had the concept of a console versus a desktop, plain text editors can be used as a console or it can be used as a desktop because the tool, which is known as a text editor, existed during the days of the consoles. And when people started using desktops, people still wanted text editors because it's required to do things. Once you get a little more advanced into programming, you will find that you're more productive using a console text editor, which is terminal commands. You can do the entire thing with just a keyboard. When you're starting out, or if you're just comfortable, I would say lazy, and being lazy is a good thing in the programming field. You would like to use a desktop text editor. So let me see if I show you. Unfortunately, I don't, but the closest thing I can show you is this editor called Emacs, which technically is a console editor, but it's gotten so advanced to where it's a hybrid. So it is both. I would not suggest you starting out with Emacs. I will say one day try it out, but starting out, you're going to spend more time trying to learn how to use it than actually focus on programming. But for the sake of this example, in my text editor, I can create test.py, and that creates a file. It's an empty file. Emacs is smart enough to identify that it's a Python file. So we just created a Python program if you're watching the stream. So with my editor, I created test.py, and then I typed simply just print space characters for a string hello world. I'll get more into detail of what this is doing, or I'll get more into detail of why I'm doing such, but you can see that I am trying to create a program that simply prints to the console for outputs the words hello world. So it tells me hello. So now it's time to invoke it. Give me one quick second. I'm still debating as to whether or not we're going to use this inside a virtual machine, but operating systems got a little more advanced and they created something called containers. A container, which I try to do all of my development in. We don't live in a perfect world where there's some older software, for example, lots of enterprises that have pre-existing software that wasn't made in the last 5 years. They're obviously not going to have containers. But starting software in the future, it's good practice to use something called a container. You can think of it as a lightweight virtual machine. So in our case, for learning, it's just the exact same thing as a virtual machine, but this allows me to set up a Python environment. This allows me to set up a uniform environment on any computer. So a container, you can think of it as a shipping crate. So a conventional program, it's a program on your Mac, doesn't Windows, because our operating systems are different. A container is like the shipping crate. You can just pick up your crate here and move it over there. And the fact of that makes it kind of work on any platform. So it abstracts away the operating system itself. I don't want to talk anymore because that's just going to confuse you all and it's not important. But basically, I can use a container to set up my Python environment. When we're using a virtual machine, the virtual machine, you can think of it as the container. So we're all using the exact same type of Python. We're using the exact same type of terminal. That comes into importance where people update Python, people update programs, so they have different versions. So that's why we want to make sure all of our versions are the same thing, so they're always doing the same thing when we do them. Now I'm trying to probably I'll have to set up these commands in the future. I'm going to try to run you the program, and then that's going to be the end of our day. So let me get Python set up.
So you typed it in one thing just to explain it, and now you're typing in a different thing to actually run it?
Yeah, this part you guys shouldn't look at. I should have prepared this ahead of time. But I'm just trying to get the Python installed, and then we'll go from there. So in your case, as I'm doing this, basically you're going to have a terminal that already has the Python. Oh, here. Yeah, this is if you see the commands I'm typing currently, don't worry about trying to understand these yet, but this
Can't
is
see
me.
that really, or I can't see it. Like
Too small.
Discord's quality isn't really there, so you have to make.
Oh, shit.
I don't know if you can make it bigger.
On Mac you can. I'm still new to the Windows. Oh, here we go.
Perfect. That's
There
really
you
good
go.
right
Now
there.
I can see.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, this is. I can make it a little bigger, or is this fine?
Bigger would be better.
And I may have
Bigger the
missed
better,
part of the
baby.
part,
All
but
right, so you
what
guys
is
can read this?
thing called again? Is it like the terminal on the Mac?
Yes. So on your Mac, you can find Windows and Mac, you know, apples and oranges, the same shit. But Mac,
Okay.
you can type in terminal. On Macs, on Windows, you can type in C and command prompt.
Right now.
In our case, you're going to be running. Yeah, you can actually you might be able to have it on your Mac. Windows doesn't have it on Python. I'm talking about. But in the future, we're going to have a uniform terminal that's going to be a different operating system from both Mac and Windows. So you'll be introduced to that. So, but I'm essentially trying to set up a small virtual machine.
Sounds good.
relatively
Sounds
quickly.
good. Yeah. So for the guys watching out there, on Mac you can pull up terminals. So you just do Command Space and type in terminal. You see that little mini thing popping up. It's on my screen, and you can press Enter. I'm not going to press Enter because when I do it, it doesn't pull it up on the screen. But that's essentially how you pull up this menu that Noah's on for Windows. Mac, it's pretty much the same thing, just a different title.
Yep. So if you're curious, when I was talking about the two ways interface with a computer, turns out graphical interfaces are a lot more advanced. So a graphical interface can still give you a terminal interface. That's why I can have a pretty looking terminal. Microsoft, Mac does a lot better job of making their terminal pretty. Microsoft, as you can see, this thing is butt ugly, but they don't care because it's designed for one thing, which is using your Windows computer as. If I wanted to list all my files, I can type a command, and then there's all my files to do. If I want to, you know, go onto the desktop and then create a new file, I can do it through a terminal, but I can also just do it through the graphical interface and do a new file. Okay, so let's see. Yeah. I will publish the virtual machine once it's created. It will be using Linux Ubuntu, and anybody watching, it'll be free to download, and there will be instructions for how to set it up. I guess some homework for you guys would be to set up something called a hypervisor. That's the thing to run the virtual machine. Why isn't this letting me? Oh, here we go. So a hypervisor allows you to run the virtual machine, and the homework will be to install a hypervisor. There's two primary hypervisors you're going to want. One's called VMware Fusion. The other one is called OpenBox. VMware Fusion, you can think of it as the Acura or whereas OpenBox is the Hana. They do the same thing. VMware Fusion is a little nicer. Unfortunately, VMware Fusion does require a license, so not all people will be able to get it. Some people, you can message me privately, but you may qualify for a license. Free license to. Just download OpenBox. You can OpenBox, and this is a hypervisor that allows you to run the program. Here it is. Oh, VirtualBox. Condolences. So it's a program called VirtualBox. This is made by our friends over at Oracle. So all you have to do for homework is download this application. Stephen and Maxwell, I'll talk to you later. VMware Fusion is the same thing, but it allows for slightly better integration. It's a little prettier. You know, you can both copy with the clipboard, but VMware in general say quality. In our case, not a big deal. Either or gets the job done. So now you're going to see me firing open a POSIX terminal, which is a Linux terminal. This is actually, these commands you're going to see me typing once this thing downloads and sets up are actually what you will be typing in the future.
Oh, great.
So as you can see, I might go a little fast. Don't worry about understanding everything, but you see your user. My username is root. This is your host name. So you can customize this prompt to look wherever you want, but basically you type in commands, press enter, and it'll tell you things. So I can type ls, and this will list all my files and folders. So I'm going to the temp directory, which I bind it to my desktop, and I do ln, and then py, which lists any Python files. Here you see test.py. Now I type in Python, which is telling the terminal's telling my Linux to invoke the Python program, and is saying run test.py. Look at that. It didn't run. And that's because we have something called a syntax error. I was in Ruby world, and consequently I forgot to put parentheses. As you see, this is the way we're going to initially be debugging our programs.
No, what are you riding a fucking dildo? Jesus Christ! See you hopping up and down.
About that, he's kicked. Jesus, that was a little obnoxious. So, we are fixing our syntax. And so I'm doing the correct way of Python, which is saying I want to call the print function. And then now I'm adding the parenthesis, and then I'm passing the variable. So if you see me run this again, outputs what we exactly wanted it to do. Hello world. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Our Python programs can get more and more advanced, so you can do any. We're going to be doing all of our work doing similar things to this. Our next lesson we will be having the virtual machine set up, and then we're going to start diving into the stuff we wanted to actually do. Thank you for bearing through this initial stuff. This got us to our Hello World. We have a working Hello World program. I can post these source codes online. I'll say a part of the homework will not only be downloading our virtual machine, but it will be running and creating a Hello World application.
All right. Well,
now
thank you
it's
a lot,
time
Noah.
for
Thank you
question
so
and
much
answers.
for sharing this knowledge with us. For everyone who finds this a little bit, confusing right now, we will be posting some of the instructions in the description of the video. And, this is just the introduction. So you guys are going to get the hang of it better and better as we go along.
It is also the first episode of the series, so I love criticism, or what do you call that?
Feedback?
Whatever you constructive feedback. So if I'm maybe saying just too much stuff, or maybe just giving you too much information, or maybe I'm not elaborating enough on certain things, please keep me posted. You know, for example, okay, make it easier to read. Like Steven said, I will be posting a guide being typed, and in the future, hopefully, maybe I'll have a PowerPoint to go along with it as well.
We just
Are
have
there any
one
comments in the
comment
YouTube?
from Ashwin in Fremont, and he says that, Noah, you're a really good teacher. You feel like a professor at college.
Oh, I'm humbled. I'm not a professor, but we're doing this kind of in a way. Hopefully, it's going to be a little more interactive than what you think of as a college course. Thank you for that compliment. So I don't know. One last thing I'd like to cover is did I go over what our end goal of, or what our master project is going to be throughout this course? Okay, good. So, as we mentioned, we want to learn Python and web technologies. So we are going to be using Python. We're going to dabble in building websites. And our end goal is to actually use Python to not only just create websites, but to extract data from other websites and allow us to do things with that data. So that's called web scraping. A project we're going to be doing is we're going to be learning how to scrape websites and automatically extract information. A good example would be maybe you have a competitor in your e-commerce field. You can start scraping all of his products, and then you can extract the correct information to have accurate pricing against your products and price all of yours maybe $5 lower. And then everybody on Google, everybody's going to just have an incentive to be yours. So our example is we're going to be creating a web scraper to scrape a stock ticker off sec.gov. So we're going to be scraping a good example of Steven's favorite company, AMZN. And we're going to, this is a good model.
I should know this, but I'll look it up really quickly.
Oh, wait, I was in the wrong form. I got it, AMZ. Here it is. So we are going to be learning, we're going to create a web scraper where you can enter in any stock ticker. We're going to get the 10Q. And we will essentially extract these into a Excel spreadsheet. Here it is. So this is, if you look at my screen right here, this is an HTML document. It has a bunch of data about maybe Amazon or any other company's numbers. Here's how much money. Shoot, zoomed in a little too much. Here's how much cash they have. Here's how much this. And we're, right now, yeah, you can copy paste that. And I can copy paste this into an Excel spreadsheet, but why should I do that? We can automatically do that. So our end goal is to create a Python program that will scrape this and then put that into an Excel spreadsheet and automate the task of that. That is a very practical example because along the way, we will be creating something called a library and such, which allows us to kind of make do future work off this example. So I guess a good way of phrasing it is this SEC web scraper that we will be creating in Python throughout our course is a good model in the future if you wanted to scrape a different website, or maybe if you wanted to automate Excel, because this will both be doing scraping the web. It will be creating a website itself to run locally, and it will be interfacing with Microsoft Excel, so you can learn how to use programs to automate.
Yeah, it'll be perfect actually, because in my job functionality, and I'm sure in a lot of logistics and finance jobs, you're always taking a lot of data from external websites and exporting it into a CSV or Excel file. So that would be a perfect functionality for it, and I'm sure Max could use it for his website.
Oh, Max and I have been using it. If, a good example for us is we can actually use it to scrape competitors and compare us to them, and we can say, okay, what are they doing, or what are they selling, how much are they selling, and that gives us a competitive advantage because we can do that in orders of magnitude faster. In the field that Max works in, there's tens of thousands of listings on the websites. If you had the average Joe Schmo, that our competitors, they can't manually go through tens of thousands of listings every 5 days and see how we changed our prices. But when you automate the task like that, we can and they can't.
Yeah, that seems very powerful.
So that's another good example. Yep, and like as you guys described, Conley and Steven both said, I'm just doing a lot of boring stuff at work. Well, if that boring stuff is boring enough, you can automate it and automate it with Python, and then consequently you are being a lot more productive at work, or you can just not be bored doing that stuff and you can focus on more exciting things and just get more work done than everybody else, consequently making you a better candidate to be promoted.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so that covered kind of our end goal, which will be to learn how to use Python to interface with Excel, as well as create a website interface for us to enter in a stock ticker and scrape information from sec.gov and learn how to slice and dice the data. So I hope you're all looking forward to it. I will have some instructions for the assignment before the next lesson, and that'll be it. So any additional questions, feel free to chime in.
What'll be like your
So I believe we have my friend Ashwin here in the stream. He had a question. Ashwin, what was your question?
You're cutting out.
You're not
It's a little
coming in that
difficult to
clearly.
hear.
If you want to type the question onto
If
either the
you can
YouTube
type it,
stream
yeah.
or this chat.
Sometimes Discord's a little finicky. You can either try to cut your video and talk, or wire into Ethernet. It may have to do with the bandwidth on the Wi-Fi, or just type in your.
type it in?
Oh, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So like, why don't we read the next class?
That's what we're gonna decide. We will maybe do. I don't know. I guess that's for everybody else to chime in. Do we want to do it on Saturday still? We can do it on Sunday. I'm thinking Sunday may be a little more appropriate because Saturdays are just a little demanding for just sitting there to learn program all night. So, at like people's availabilities, that's when you're going to be, people are more likely to be socializing. So I'm thinking Sunday. Does anybody have any objections?
Oh, I think Sunday night would be great.
Sounds good
I
to
think
me.
it's
Yeah, because it's it's a little more chilled. You're not going to be having plans to meet or whatever not. And do we want to do weekly or bi-weekly?
I say we could go weekly.
weekly.
Okay, yeah, we can do weekly, and then like for example, we may get some people coming in one week and some people coming in the next week. So we'll have it like we'll do it weekly, and then we'll maybe have bi or tri-weekly big checkpoints to get done. So like if you miss a week, it's not the end of the world. You can attend the next week and then just catch back up.
Sounds great.
Okay, so Sunday evenings we're gonna start doing it, and then once we kind of get into the other thing, Ash, earlier before the stream started, we have two other professional software engineers. We have a cybersecurity expert at the Ohio State University. We also have a software engineer at Microsoft who works on the Azure cloud. So that's my friends Jack and Daniel. They will be also participating. They will help answer questions. They will also help explain things. So it's not just me, and they will just be here just for general advice. So hopefully you guys will get to meet them, and then there will also be other people that will slowly venture in who I hope are also interested in learning how to optimize their work or life using programming in Python.
That's cool. Hey,
All
Steven, you have to call like
Yeah,
Furman
yeah,
here
we
too.
could get all of my friends in here.
So what time? Yeah, so Sunday evening. Yeah, just get anybody's free to get in. We'll have we'll set it up on YouTube, all the things. I'm in the process of setting up a web service, and I'll maybe also publish a website. That's perfect. I'll publish a website with the next step, the next time, as well as instructions for how you can prepare
Yeah,
beforehand. So we'll all just
and
reference
any
the website.
information that Noah sends to me, guys, I'll be sure to add it to the YouTube description so that you guys will get access to all that information, including any software that we need to install for the next class, and also streaming times for the next lesson.
Yep, and then eventually the website will be up. No guarantee when. Hopefully within a week. But until then, for this episode, do what Steven
Sounds
said.
great. Thank you so much, Noah.
All right.
I'm gonna go.
All right.
Yeah, I'm
well,
gonna go
thank
ahead
you,
and
everybody.
hop off the stream and just deliver a.
Thank you. Are you using Windows right now, or are you using Mac?
It doesn't matter. So we are diverse and we are very inclusive. We allow any operating system, any personal computer that was made maybe after 2005 will be able to work with this course.
Yeah, and Noah is personally using Windows right now.
So that's the goal. I'm personally using Windows. I originally had plans to do this episode on Mac, and the Discord stream wasn't working, so I just switched over to Windows. So it doesn't matter regardless. The instructions will work for any operating system, and you don't need any special hardware. Like I said, any laptop, desktop gets the job done.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for being the first episode, and hopefully we'll have many more.
I will go ahead and get off the stream and deliver a message to my YouTube followers.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna probably go eat some dinner. Well, thank you all again. Thank you, YouTubes, and then anybody. I guess I'll talk to. We may set up other sources of streaming. Max, if you would like to stream it, feel free to. Anybody else? I personally am not streaming it, but I'm giving anybody full rights to stream it. You know, YouTube algorithm has been pretty hot lately with software videos, and there's a lot of people looking to learn software. It's a pretty hot field to stream it wherever else,
That's good.
Facebook, whatever not. Or just do 2 YouTube streams and just double the give it something different.
Yes.
All right, well thank you everybody. We will see you all next week.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay. All right, how do I cut out this
Yeah, I'm just delivering a message to my YouTube followers. I'll be back in a second. Yeah, guys, so if you enjoyed that content, that was Noah P. from Ohio State. He works in the cybersecurity department at Ohio State University. He's going to get multiple different people to pitch in and really help teach this course in Python. If anything's confusing, we will be having, more resources within the description, within other videos, and, hope to see you guys in future videos. Thank you guys so much. If you enjoyed this content, go ahead and like and subscribe, share this video with your friends. This was our trial stream, so things were a little bit jumbled up today, but, the expectation is as we get going more and more with more classes, that we're going to get this Python programming course and this stream, situated even better than before. That's going to do it for me, guys. Good night.